Can you all see me and hear me? Hey, I see a few thumbs up, a few nodding icons. Excellent, excellent. Well, we'll get started in a second while Kat
Oh, wait.
and I drink our coffees and teas. Hope you all got your mugs of coffee and tea with you. Oh, it's hot. Too hot for me. Right. Okay. Oh, excellent. What's this? Let's zoom in on this mug here. Hang on. I'm going to zoom in on the best mug. Who we got? Who we got? That's Beth, isn't it? Hello. Oh, yes.
Oh, yes. Like
That's
it.
a mug. Okay. Well, yeah. Excellent. Anyone else got a good mug? Oh, another one over here. I like this game. Let's spotlight this mug. Any other mugs? Where is it? I've lost you.
Mine's very boring, I'm afraid. It's just.
Where's that mug? Show us that mug. Abs, isn't it? Yes. Hello, Abs. Show us that mug. Oh, yeah. Brilliant. Who's got another good mug? Anyone? Okay. You enjoy your mugs. It's Sunday afternoon. Let's all just relax. Okay. Right. I'll get things going, shall we? Okay, right. Well, thanks for coming this afternoon to Event Horizon Online, Shoreline Infinity's live events. This is the next one in the series. Normally we do these in the flesh, but at the moment, for various obvious reasons, we're doing them all online. My name is Noel Chidwick. I'm the Editor-in-Chief of Shoreline of Infinity. I'm going to be looking after you this afternoon. So for those of you who don't know, Shoreline of Infinity publishes a science fiction magazine, publish books, we run live events. We've been going for about 5 years. We're based in Edinburgh, Scotland, for anyone who doesn't know us. We're going to be recording this for later viewing. So if you are somewhere you shouldn't be at the moment, now is a good time to take off your video link. So we're going for the relaxed Sunday afternoon vibe for these events. So pull up a couch, take a sip of tea. Oh, and it is for question sessions as well. So please make sure you got your questions sharpened. And you can post questions in the chat box at the bottom of the screen. You may see that somewhere. Oh, so somebody's already sent that. So I'll just say hello as well. Hello, hello from the chat box. So post your questions there. If you're too shy to speak up, then I'll happily tell you a question for you. And I'm just going to let someone in. Late comer just come in. If you hear that beeping, that's someone just literally trying to get out the door. So I'm just going to let them in. So bear with me.
Said no, the classroom's locked. No, I'm joking.
No,
Come in.
This is not Gavin Williamson territory. Everyone's up for it at the moment. So go for it. So I'll just let this person in. Now I've got to find my other screen. There we go. Just double check that's actually happened. I can't multitask. It's not in my skill set. So I'll make a lousy present to the United States.
If you can string a sentence together, you're already miles ahead.
Well, that's dubious at the moment anyway. Come on. There we go. There we go. That's it. It's triggered. So that person, I didn't catch the name, will be coming along shortly. Yeah, so where was I? So put your questions in the chat box ready for Kat. What else? We're not planning a fire drill. So if the alarm does go off, I'm out of here. If yours goes off, I suggest you do the same. The rest of us be okay, we'll be fine. Come on, this last person, when you come. Too late now. Hang on, who was that? Hello, yes. Right, so that's the basic housekeeping. If you want to find out about Shoreline Infinity, it's at shorelineofinfinity.com. So up along and come in. One last person coming in. So a round of applause to the latest person. Yay! So let's get started then. I'm going to introduce you to Cat Hellisen. Now, Cat grew up, I'm told, in various South African towns and now lives in Scotland, I can vouch for that, where she skates, paints, and occasionally writes weird little fictions. Well, does it very well too, in my opinion. Her story, The Worm Bridge, won Short Story Day Africa, and the latest fantasy novel, Bones Like Bridges, plays with class and magic to take on the end of civilization. So there we go. We're actually very proud to actually publish one of Cat's stories in Shoreline of 13, number 14. And when it popped in the submissions pile, I took it almost by the title alone. Let me read it to you. The title, that is, not the story. Oh, baby teeth Johnny, with your radiant grin, let's enroll on moonlight and gin. Now, isn't that a great title?
I was happy with it.
I read that, I thought, I hope the story is as good as the title. And it is, if
It's
not better.
brilliant. It's better than, she said, totally unbiased.
Oh, great. Immodest writer, there's so few of them around. It's a fantastic story, and so I do encourage you to read it if you can. And the rest of Cat's stuff as well.
Thank you, Noel.
Yeah. So today Cat will be reading a short extract from a story she's publishing next year, but she's here mostly to talk about her writery experience and her writing rules experience. So Cat, over to you.
Thank you so much, Noel, for the very kind introduction. And I must say, I thought when I sent that story in, I was sort of like, oh, no one in a million years is going to take this story. So thank you for taking it. It is an odd duck, as are most of my stories.
I love it to bits.
Thank you. Right. Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming. Basically, as Noel said, my name's Cat Hellisen, and I write weird little fantasies. And what I want to do today is talk about my thoughts on the writing rules that get handed down, especially to newer writers, and our sort of fascination with this idea that we have to follow them and that's our route to publication. And I feel that's a rather detrimental thing to a lot of writers and to their voices. So who am I to go talk about this? Well, I started writing well over a decade ago, and I was in a country that had absolutely no fantasy publications. Later on, we did briefly have a magazine, but all our publishing houses are very anti-fantasy. All their submissions guidelines were no fantasy, whatever. So I had to look a bit further afield and try and discover how to get published and how to write and all that via the internet, because there was no one around. And I made a lot of terrible mistakes because I followed all those writing rules, and I had no teacher. My teacher was the voices on the internet, and sometimes those voices are very wrong. So what I wanted to do was come and just sort of lay out the mythology and say, this is not necessarily what you need to do. So before I get into that, and before I take any questions that people have, which I will hopefully be able to answer as best I can, I'd like to read the opening for a short story that is coming out next year. It was supposed to come out this year, but yay, COVID. Most of you guys will know Newcon, and it's one of their anthologies that's coming out, and it's edited by Storm Constantine, whose name I still don't know how to pronounce. So if it's Constantine, someone can come and hit me later. She put out a call for basically weird little stories, and what I wanted to do was try write a weird little story about well, the thing was, it was called Shadows on the Hillside. That was the prompt, and it was to do with landscapes, fantasy landscapes. And I started writing, because I was here in Scotland and I was very homesick, I started writing a story set where I lived in South Africa. And the strange little story came out. So I'm going to just read the intro for you, the first 1,000 words. It's called Between Skin and Sea. I moved here to escape the ocean. That makes no sense, you say, as we leave my stone-walled cottage. Its garden swamped by lapping dunes, fig marigolds in pinks and purples, creeping cape rushes and heath ericas. The sea batters at my door, fishery keen, iodine-tailed. Not all oceans are the same, though all oceans are one. I see you, daughter. You roll your eyes, mutter under your breath. You check your wrist and pluck excuses from the carcass of our visit. Chicken feather lies, white, choking the air around us. 3 years have passed since last you visited. I understand. You hate the smell of magic, and you hate the hush of water, the the suck of grains of sand swirling away from your feet. It reminds you of what we are and what you pretend not to be. It's raining. I'm making you walk with me along the water's edge where tiny jellyfish have come to die in translucent pink mouths. We are trapped water-wise between the drizzle and the salt sea. There is no escape. Rain runs down my head and back, and I long to stretch out my arms and fly between these worlds of water. We walk from river mouth to river mouth, white sand turning golden beneath our naked feet. In silence, I gather fallen feathers, green and black as oil, and put them in my woven bag. I'm thinking of moving, you say. The secret you have been sucking between your teeth, sour and pebble hard, you spit it out so that it lands between us. It takes root in our churned footprints. You're not thinking. I will not ask where you're going. It will be far from waves and the rotting carcasses of stingrays, from the ash-black wheeling of the gulls. Back-bowed, I dig a fallen cormorant feather out of the muddy sand, my long skirts pulled by the endless cape winds. You've already packed your things. You shrug in response. I was never the best of mothers, but you were never the best of daughters. A fair trade then, both of us awkward and ugly in our different ways. It's not the end of the world, you say. You can visit. We both know I won't. I am tied to the water. We have reached the boundary of the river, and while you stand on the crumbling sandbank, I step into the swirling estuary, brackish brown, thick with broken stems of water hyacinth, and look upriver to where the flamingos stand at sinuous attention. They gabble at me in their harridan goose voices, and I step back out. It is time to go home. I shrug out of my sodden top and let the rain soothe my ruined skin. Already the clouds are thinning, and the wet sand smell of witchcraft and promises will dry up under the returning sun. When you were born, I made you a tiny coat. It was green and sharp, a poisonous baby jacket of nettles and thorns. I thought it would keep you safe here with me. The world is no place for women like us. Our bones are wrong. People want to cage us. They see only beauty that they must own, the grace, the bright eye, the pointed nail, the curve of a neck or arms, so wing-like, delicate. I thought if I stopped you from growing up and becoming like me, that I would have done my duty as a mother. Instead, you screamed every time I made you wear the jacket, and one morning I found it torn to pieces in our front room, a display of temper and self. When you turned teenager and the landscape of your body began to transmute, I knew that no coat of nettles would ever help. I left my ocean shores and limped inland, trekking to the garish city shops, the hordes of people who stared at my dowager's hump hidden under a thick coat, my scarred face, my beakish nose, my 2 black eyes. There I bought you creams and silver tweezers, depilatories, unguents, suicide-sharp razors, glitter and oil. I taught you how to pluck and paint, to redraw your personal topography. You dyed your hair cadmium like a flag of war. We learned to keep secrets from each other, burying ourselves in separate graves. This is not the first time you are running from me. Do you remember, you say, as we take the winding paths back to my home, past your father's empty cottage, where the lampless lighthouse stands in solemn erection, convinced of its mastery over the slick rocks and wanton water? Yes. When you left home, I gave you the skin you were born in, stripped while you were still bloody, rinsed and dried and folded away. It had grown as you had grown. I wrapped it in brown paper and tied it with salt grass. Did you ever open it? You looked to the sky, now muscle blue, dragged with wisps of white, the sun extending, grasping golden anemone tentacles. You laugh. What did you want me to do? Wear it? Perhaps. I wear what's left of mine. My husband pulled all the feathers from my true skin and burned them in the lighthouse fire that warned ships of danger, told stories across the darkness. Stay away, stay away. There is no safety here. The sea will eat you. My skin is pebbled and stretch saggy, but it still fits. Sometimes I dream that if I wear it long enough and keep it warm with blood heat, the feathers will grow back in, bright darts piercing outward, their barbs tight, oil-preened, black and glossy. Instead, all I have are nudified wings, draggled with stolen plumage, pathetic and ugly as uncooked Sunday roast. I stretch out these raw, hideous limbs, and you curl your mouth in disgust. Hide them. Why should I? Because they're disgusting, you look like a freak. Do you want people to know what we are? So? You make me childish and petulant. I want to stamp my feet and throw myself down on the ground, scream. I taught you to hate yourself, to hate me, when I should have taught you to hate the men who trap us in these stone cages, who trick us with pretty words, beams of light, safe harbors, then steal who we are from ourselves. This is me, I tell her, but it is too late to unpick the work of 23 years. Okay, so that is the first third of the story. And the reason why I chose it is specifically because it ties in very neatly to a writer rule that I absolutely loathe, which is write what you know. So I don't know how many of you have encountered write what you know, because I think it's one of the most annoying, cruel things to say to writers, especially to like fledgling writers who are just starting to learn how to write. Because what it is very good advice. It's in fact excellent advice, but it's badly given. I did in fact write what I know there. I wrote about where I lived. I wrote about the flamingos and the estuaries and about the cormorants and everything. But I am certainly not a woman who used to be a bird, who was, I haven't murdered my husband yet. I only have, well, I do have a teenage daughter. I have two, but none of them have wandered off to become birds either. So what I wanted to say is that I think write what you know is a terrible piece of advice in that people take it as it stands, as it's written, as it's given. And a lot of people who write fantasy are then going, oh, what am I supposed to do? I'm not actually a moon monster, or I'm not actually a vampire. And teachers like to give this advice to children in school, and they mean it as, you know, write about your summer holidays. And I think that it's a terrible way to give it a really good, interesting piece of advice. So my take on it is infuse your writing with what you know, which I think is a much safer and healthier way of taking that advice. So what I do is I try and infuse my writing with what I know. And mostly I know birds and water, so hence that story. So thank you, that was that. I'm not quite sure if people have questions or if they want anything in particular that they want to know about, but I wanted to look at, these are some things that I'd like to look at if you're interested. Plotting versus pantsing, which I think is a, can I use the word bullshit? I think it's a load of bullshit. And I think people get too hung up on, are they a plotter, are they a pantser, and what's the right way to write? And show versus tell, I think, is another one that needs a lot of being torn apart and rearranged. And then things that are a bit more to do with sort of post the initial flood of writing, when people talk about revisions and how few revisions they do or how many revisions they do. I think those are all things that maybe people get a bit confused about when they first start writing. And even people who've written for a very long time can sometimes have a lot of self-doubt and think, oh God, maybe if I actually plotted the next novel out, I would sell them something. I know I've had these thoughts. So I'll start with plotting versus pantsing. For anyone who doesn't know what pantsing is, I assume you'll do, but if you don't, it's the idea of sitting down and just writing and seeing what comes out, versus obviously sitting down and setting out your plot by some Save the Cat or whatever beat sheet, whatever people are into these days. So I am very clearly not a plotter. I find it boring. I like to start off with like a line or two or a character or concept basically of a person in a strange place. And then I just write and see what happens, because I find that quite fun. I find that interesting. What it does mean is that I am ultimately a plotter, in that it takes me 150,000 words to outline my plot. But I do plot. I plot by taking a very long time to get to grips with my story. I'm not very keen on the idea of people following beat sheets, not because I think they're useless, but because I think they're designed for a different medium. A lot of them are for film or occasionally for theatre, but mainly for film. And what works very well for a film narrative is not necessarily going to work very well for a narrative in the form of a novel or a short story or whatever. I think there's things to be learned from them, but I don't think that we should be slavishly following them. And I think telling new writers to slavishly follow them is a terrible way to get people to write. So if anyone has any questions about plotting versus pantsing, or show versus tell, write what you know. High concept, that's another fun one, where every novel has to be high concept. I'm happy to take them, or I could just waffle on. So your choice, waffling or questions.
So any questions out there? I mean, unmute yourself and let Cat.
Oh, okay.
Who's got
All
a
right.
question?
Is it okay if I ask a quick question then? Often I find I'll have a great idea for a story, and the setting feels quite real, and the character I quite chime with, and then I get into it and I start to write and I think, what the bloody hell am I going to do with these people? So any ideas of how to get past that?
Okay, no, that is actually a great thing, because that is one of the problems with pantsing, is that like you have that burst of initial, oh my God, this is so exciting, and I love this character, and I love this world, and then because you haven't outlined a plot, you kind of go, oh, and you stall. And I think that's why a lot of people are so into plotting and so into pushing it as a thing, because yes, it gives you this very helpful framework, so that when you do get stuck, you go, okay, but I remember I was going to do this and this and this. I have nothing against outlining. I think outlining is great. And I don't do it. But so I get to that point that you're talking about quite a lot. And I think Neil Gaiman talks about it quite often when he's talking about what if questions. It might not have been him, might have been someone else, but I do a lot of what ifs. And I will sit there and I'll scroll out pages, because I like to work by hand when I hit that point. Just like, what if this happens? What if that happens? I have left myself notes on manuscripts that go, what if giant polar bears with lasers came in right now in a novel that had nothing to do with lasers or polar bears? Because you do get frustrated. I find that having to do that kickstarts a part of your brain that you dig and you dig and you dig, and you don't just write like, what if Bob marries Nancy and then go with that. You just write, you keep writing what ifs. You just keep writing this list of what ifs, because it's almost like there's a part of your brain that's sitting underwater, or like there's 2 layers of water. So there's all this obvious stuff that's sitting on the top layer, and you have to kind of get down past that top. Is it salt water that floats on fresh water? Who knows? One of them. You got to get down past that layer and get into the next layer of water, where the really interesting things are. And to get there, you have to go through all that surface stuff, all that stuff that's sitting on the top, which, as we know what floats to the surface. Trumps. Yeah, so get past all the trumps and get down to the nitty gritties and just ask a lot of what if questions. And things start to pull themselves together once you hit the right what if. And the other thing I'd like to say is trust your brain, and that none of that writing that you do when you go off course is wasted. A lot of that you can repurpose, or it goes towards your mental image of your world and your world building or your characters. So I'm not anti-revisions the way a lot of like the big outliner people are, because they're like, oh, if you outline, then you have less revision to do. And I'm like, revision? The part where it all starts becoming a novel. That's the part where like you get to play with it. So if you're willing to accept that I've got to probably do a lot of revisions and do a lot of thinking, you can get past that moment. Not to say it's easy, but yeah, that's what I do. Just throw a lot of what ifs.
No, thank you.
Or sometimes abandon a novel for 5 years and come back to it later.
That's a good technique. Thank you.
Pleasure. Ruth, you asked high concept. What do I mean by high concept? I don't know how much that gets pushed. I know the Americans push it a lot. I don't know how much it gets pushed in the UK, but there's a lot of people who want high concept novels. And the easiest way to explain it is if one movie meets another. Ghostbusters meets Harry Potter. So if you can pitch your novel like that, then, like the sort of elevator pitch, agents love that, or at least American agents do. As I say, I can't speak for UK. And so you have a lot of people who pass down this knowledge that, if you want to do well and hook an agent and sell your book, whatever, you need to be high concept. And I think high concept can be quite fun. If you come up to me with a pitch that's like, oh, geez, I don't know, Spider-Man in steampunk Victorian England, I'd be like, oh, I'm vaguely interested. Let me hear more. So it is a great way to pitch something and to come up with an idea and a premise. But I don't think it should be the be-all and end-all of how to start a story. And there's a lot of people who push it as your novel has to be high concept, which, say, not my idea of fun. Great if it works for other people. Doesn't work for me. Doesn't work for me as a writer. Doesn't work for every writer. Does that make sense? Yes? Cool.
Yeah, well, can I ask a question from that, Kat? It's really about when you're starting off your story, your book, your novel. Which is the best way to start? Is it start with your plot, or do you start with a strong character or a couple of characters?
I don't know. I think the best way to start a novel is a way that makes you want to write a novel. So for some people, if you want that, especially if you, I think, write in very plot-focused genres, something like a mystery where you need to have your plot pieces all in the right place, in the right time. I think outlines make a lot of sense, and starting with an overall plot is probably good. Trying to then shoehorn a mystery plot onto a sprawling fantasy epic might not work that well. Probably can be done. As I always say, everything can be fixed in revisions, which I think comes from Absolute Right's Water Cooler, which was where I learned a lot of things. But yeah, for me personally, I like to start with a single character and a place. And I like to have the very vaguest idea of what's going on. And then I sort of see where they go and I follow them and I'm like, oh, this is cool, this is interesting. Yeah. And I explore the world with the character. So my first drafts are shocking. They are literally shocking. And I think that's another thing that a lot of new writers don't understand is that a first, second, third, 17th draft do not bear any resemblance to a published novel. And I know it can be very disheartening when they're writing and they're like, this is such a mess and I don't know what I'm doing and everything's wrong and these characters are flat and this plot makes no sense and look at this brilliant book Terry Pratchett wrote. I'll never be able to, well, none of us will do that. But anyway, some other writer wrote, and no, that's been revised how many times? That's gone through an editor, through copy editors, through multiple rounds of editing. So yes, if you accept that your first few drafts are going to be a lovely sprawling mess, then you can approach your novel in any way you want that makes you excited to write. But I think the moment you stop wanting to write because you feel like if I don't write this way, I'm not a real writer, which is one of my least favorite things to hear, then that novel's dead in the water. It's stalled simply because you're mistaking a first draft for a finished novel.
Yeah,
that makes sense?
Yeah, it does. But which point then does a story, do you let a story out of your cocoon? It had gone through the first draft, second draft. Which point do you give it to somebody else and say, here, what do you think of this story so far?
These days, probably in about the second or third draft, because I think I might be lying to myself. I think they're a little bit more cohesive these days than they were 10 or 12 years ago. But I certainly had, I have sent out novels to agents when I was first querying many years ago, novels that were literally half-baked. And they had gone through beta readers and so on, but you do learn, and as you progress, you find different ways of writing stories. Luckily, my then half-baked novels were a bit more commercial, so that helped. That was on my side. But nowadays, I write. I would say by about the second or third draft, they're ready to have a beta reader look at them.
Yeah.
And then I cry and stamp my feet a whole lot. Sorry, my dog just came in.
Oh, dogs
She's
are
opening the door. Just give me a
dog.
second. No, she gets cross if I lock her out, and I've locked her out. Sorry. Yeah. Sorry, what was I saying? Yeah, about the third draft.
Yeah.
I let my beta readers tear into it for a bit. I usually try to ignore everything they say in a fit of pique, but eventually I incorporate the things I decide are okay. Which is another thing, I think, that a lot of new writers want to take all the advice. They, if they do have a novel that's like critique group feedback, which I'm sure a lot of you guys go through with short stories. You know, you hand in your short story, everyone critiques it, and you get all this feedback. And I think in the early stages, you maybe want to try and incorporate all the feedback, but not everyone is your reader, and not every bit of feedback is right. And I think as you progress a bit, you start realizing this person's advice is good for someone else's novel, not mine. This person's advice makes sense. You don't, not in a nasty way, but you just start to be able to balance and judge what feedback is actually useful to you, and what's just fluff that you can just go like, oh, don't worry about it. So yeah, and editors can be wrong too, human. So.
Oh yes.
Sorry for you, Noel. I will generally take the advice of editors, and I try not to fight, but there are things that I have fought. I don't think we fought on anything,
No,
but I have distinct memories.
I can't remember who edited your story.
Did we
Wasn't
fight on
me.
something? No, but you do like a, no, it wasn't you, but I don't think we fought about anything. I've had one editor where I literally was like, they're editing someone who's not me. And in retrospect, they were not a fantasy editor.
Yeah.
They were doing an anthology. This was actually for the Wormbridge, and eventually they just handed me on to another editor. So I think I'm persona non grata there. But every other editor I've had has been fine. So,
Yeah.
and generally a good editor will guide rather than be prescriptive.
Hopefully, yeah,
So
yeah.
I found, like, if something's not working, a good editor will go, this isn't working, but they won't tell you how to fix it. They'll say, this ending is a bit rushed, or it's a bit ragged, or whatever, or these characters need more build up, but they won't be prescriptive in how you must fix it. And yeah, things like that. Those make a good editor, but you pick that up.
Yeah. There's a question
Yes.
from Richard Gregson. Can you read that? What was
Sorry.
it?
I read it. One of my patrons put it quite well. I can tell you how to write this differently, but I can't necessarily how to write better. That's down to you. Yeah, no, exactly. And sometimes I can, because I also edit quite a bit. Not my work. My work's so perfect, it doesn't need editing. No. I edit other people's work. And I was actually saying to Beth not too long ago that I find it a lot easier to edit writers who are not that good, because it's easier to see their mistakes. Because they often make quite basic mistakes. And so you sort of go, okay, honey, I know you want to open this story up with your character waking up in a room and then looking at the mirror, and you're welcome to, but it's a very obvious opening, and there's better ways that you can do it. And your story actually starts here, 4 paragraphs in, and you can be a little bit more clear in what needs to be fixed to bring the story up to the next level. When you're talking to a good writer and they've got can see that something's not working, but because they're good, it's hard for you to see where the problem is. So I do find it a lot harder for good writers, simply because their mistakes are much harder, a much higher level of mistake, much higher level of error. So yeah, that's why I don't like editing good people. No, I'm kidding. I'll edit anyone, but I do find it harder.
Any more questions? Anyone's got another question there? Let's give
I have one related to
Shell.
pantsing, I suppose.
What? To
Pantsing.
pantsing,
No,
yeah.
pantsing.
Hamsters? Hamsters, yeah, go for it.
So I used to pants a lot.
Yeah.
And then I found that I ended up in perpetual revision of work because of that.
Yeah.
And so I started plotting. And it's happened again. I'm now forever revising work to try and get it to match the plot instead. Do you have a technique, or have you found a technique to get past that? I really need to step away from this piece of work, or if I have another idea.
The cycle of eternal revisions.
And
You want to get past the cycle of eternal revisions.
Yeah.
No, you're trapped there forever.
Yeah.
Sorry, there's no escape. I'm sorry. No, okay. First of all, to clarify, I don't actually believe that any one writer is purely a plotter or a pantser. From my experience with writers, we are on a sliding scale of plotting and pantsing, and not even across. Am I still here? Because everything's frozen.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So I wouldn't even worry if you don't have to plot, you don't have to pants, you can do some weird hybrid creature in between, as long as it works for you. The eternal cycle of revision is, I'm afraid, a psychological thing. You just have to, at some point, go, this is done, and hand it on to someone who's outside of you, outside of your circle of readers, and have them be a little nasty, and not necessarily nasty, but yeah, I've got a couple. I'm a liar. I'm a hypocrite and a liar, because I have probably about 8 novels in revision limbo, because it takes so long to write them that I'm much worse in the beginning and much better towards the end, because it takes so many years. And then I look back at the early stuff and I'm like, oh God, I can't, I can't face doing this. So you have to just go no and give it to someone and let them, be brave, Shell. Send it out.
Okay.
Is it a novel or a short story?
Novels. I can't do the short story thing. I just can't do it. I've tried.
For what it's worth, I think that's another writing rule that gets handed down, that you've got to write short stories. I think many years ago, I think there was a thing where you would write short stories and then you would build up your name and then you would start writing novels, and it would be this natural progression. But I don't think it holds true, and I think if you don't want to write short stories, you shouldn't. If you don't enjoy it, if you don't like them, don't write them, don't read them.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you enjoy short stories, do come to Shoreline.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I enjoy reading them, and I try write them, but then I get sort of 15,000 words into it, and all of a sudden I got 50,000 words, and then it's like.
Well, it's why I find novellas very difficult, because to me they're an annoying length. Like, they're not a short story and they're not a novel. Make up your mind. What do you want to be? Because you're nothing at the moment. So write what makes you happy. I think that's the biggest takeaway that I can give to any writer, is that the moment you're writing something because you think you should be writing it, or you think this is how you should be writing it, that's when you start hating what you do. And when you hate your writing, why do it? Then you might as well go work in a factory somewhere, making cans of soup or something. That's my take on it. I don't know if that helped. Send it out, Shell.
Yeah, but that's a good point about writing. If you're not enjoying what you're doing, why are you doing it? I mean, there are stories of writers who just simply are compulsive writers that can do nothing else but write. That is what they are. That's what defines them. But most of us mortals aren't like that. We have other lives as well. And sometimes, to be honest, you can't be bothered. You're just too knackered after a hard day's work, and picking up the pen is just so darn difficult. So have you got any thoughts or any advice on that to help people like that? So you actually want to be a writer, enjoy the concept of writing, got some good ideas, but it's the mechanical process of sitting down with the pen and paper. How do you get over that and get into your first few words of your story?
This is going to be rich coming from me. I know there's the whole idea that you've got to write however many thousand words a day, Stephen King style. I think he writes 2,000 words a day.
So he said.
But I am not Stephen King. I don't have Stephen King's lifestyle. I have to clean my own house. I have to make my food for my children. I have to, go to work and do normal things like a normal person. And I also want to get in a bit of my Netflix and whatever. So, yeah, I do think that this idea that you've got to sit down every day and write something, while aimed at helping writers write, and I understand the concept, butt in chair, sit down and write. Not everyone can do it. So my thing is always, I have a couple of techniques I use to help me write. So one was stolen from Laura Lamb, actually. She suggested this. So this is a horrendous machine. I don't know if any of you guys have actually seen this.
Oh wow! Gosh,
this is an Alpha Neo, and you can literally do nothing on it but write in like basic text. Did you see it? Did I show it again?
Yeah.
So that's one of my things. It literally runs on like AA batteries or something. So there's some writing. That's what it looks like. It is really hard to edit on this. You just sit down and write. Okay. So that's a good way of, for me, it's of just like disconnecting from, I can't doom scroll through Twitter. I can't check Facebook. I go take that. I'm not a coffee shop writer, so COVID hasn't mattered. I don't like people around me when I write, but if I can go somewhere that I haven't got distractions and just sit down and type nonsense for 15 minutes, that's still more than I was going to get if I was sitting there on my phone doom scrolling. The other thing is I like to use a technique called the square brackets of absolution, which I don't know if anyone here has heard me talk about them before. But what I do is I hate starting it every day. I hate starting writing because it's so overwhelming. And I'm like, my brain's going, you're terrible, you can't write. Who do you think you're kidding? So I open this thing, which is called the square brackets of absolution, which is square brackets. I can write inside it. And I tell myself, everything you write inside here, you can delete. It can be absolute nonsense. So you can sit there, start writing, I hate writing, it is terrible, what, and eventually stuff starts flowing, and it's just like this little space where I can be crap. It's a mental thing. It allows me to say, it's okay if you mess this up because it's in these square brackets and they don't count. So I find that's a good way to get my brain rolling into writing.
Yeah. So sometimes you take stuff out of your square brackets, so when you've looked back at that rubbish that you thought you'd written, but actually it's pretty good. I'll have that.
Yeah, exactly. Just because you start writing rubbish doesn't mean you end up writing rubbish. 15-minute timer. I showed Noel earlier, but this is sitting on my desk. This is my owl timer, who times me for 15 minutes when I write. Because I always say you can do anything for 15 minutes, which is not true because I can't clean up anything for 15 minutes because I hate cleaning, which is why there's a white screen here so you cannot see what's behind it. But okay, so set it for 5 minutes or whatever. Build yourself up. But you can write in the little gaps and nothing has to be done all in one go. Like, how do you eat an elephant? Bite by bite. So how do you write a book word by word? You don't have to write everything in one go. And if you can't face your novel, say to yourself, what do I want to achieve with this paragraph that I'm writing right now? Not even this scene, this paragraph, and just write that paragraph. And I like to set myself very small goals, because I find if I set myself small goals, I'm more likely to like achieve them, and then I feel good. So I have a thing called Give Me 100, which you might have seen the hashtag every now and again. And basically it's sit down and write 100 words. That's all that's my goal. Sit down and write 100 words. Invariably, I end up with more than 100. And I can sometimes end up with close to 2,000 or 3,000 on a good day, but that's a good day. And if I make my 100, that's all I need. So yes, low goal, set yourself low goals, let yourself be crap, find ways to not be distracted by the internet. That's my writing advice.
How did you do the last one? Yeah, but that little machine you've got there, I've got one in my cupboard somewhere, which I bought for real many years ago. It's a Science 7, which looks like similar to that device. But yeah, that's a great idea. I might have to just dust that thing off again and take it out. Yeah.
It's just a nice way to also, because I sit in front of a computer all day. So if I'm editing or if I'm doing whatever, I am in front of a computer. And sometimes I need to step out of that space. Yeah. And the other really, really useful piece of writing advice I can give people is go out and have a life, which I think is quite useful for writing. Go out and have a hobby, go out and meet people, go out and have a few drinks with your friends, go out and walk through the park. Because anyone who's sitting in their house all day only writing isn't experiencing. And if you're not experiencing, I don't think you can bring that into your writing.
Yeah.
So I think being obsessive about writing is bad for writing. Oh, I'm so good. I'm so full of advice.
You are. I've just put those in some Christmas crackers next year. I'm just looking at the comment.
Sorry, what
it says, I do 25. I presume you mean words, or I'm not sure it's press-ups. I do 25 words. Really? That's only because it's the
What app?
The app I use. Neil, what is the app that you use?
Yeah.
Tell us. What is this app you use? Neil, come forth.
Neil doesn't want to tell us. His app is top secret.
Come on, Neil. Come and tell us.
No, he's gone. You will never know.
Oh, here we go.
A write-o-meter.
Write-o-meter?
Look that up. Oh, write-o-meter? I'm like, write-o-meter.
Quick, someone.
Oh, God. Write-o-meter. Scrivener. Oh.
Okay, Shell, yes. What's your favourite writing tool then? Scrivener, Word, or something else? Presumably.
Okay, this is quite an interesting thing, because I hated Scrivener, and I still kind of do, and I use it in very limited chunks. I use it when I want to shift scenes around, and so once I've written, I write in Word. So I write in Word. I just write all my crap. Although these days I've been using Google Docs, just because then I don't lose all my stuff. I have lost a lot of novels and a lot of short stories over the years because I'm terrible at backups. So I write in something like Google Docs, and I just write, and because I don't outline. I sometimes use mind mapping tools. I've got a whiteboard, which I can't show you, but because my screen is hiding my mess. But I have a whiteboard on the wall that I sometimes use to mind map with, which is another thing, Beth, talking about when you get stalled. I like to draw relationships and mind maps of like ideas. So that's a thing. That's a thing I do. But I have Scrivener and I don't really use it. I've tried to be a good writer, and finger quotes, I feel like I'm in a 90s American sitcom. I tried using Scrivener, and I still try and use it because I think everyone loves it so much. What am I not getting with it? But now I really just use Google Docs. I also like Google Docs because it formats for me really well when I want to just strip things to ebook format. So there's that. Yeah, sorry, I'm promoting our evil overlords, but I don't. It's just that their tool happens to work well. Ooh, Scrapple. I have not tried it. I used to use a lot, because I actually haven't been updating my writing software because I've stopped using most of it. But when I was, I was using FreeMind. I don't know if they still exist. And then I was using ZimWiki, which I don't think works anymore, for making Wikipedias for my giant fantasy novels with 100,000 different family factions and stuff like that. I think writing software can be very useful. I can't write, so I can't write by hand because my hands don't work properly and I can't hold a pen properly, and my writing's just terrible. So for me, just on screen is better. And I also type like this because I can't type either. So yeah.
So, have you ever used a typewriter, Kat? Have you actually used a real typewriter? You're probably too young for such a thing.
No, I actually, when I was in high school, because my school was backwards and stupid, I went and I went into typing on actual proper typewriters with ribbons and all that. And they came to me and told me I wasn't allowed to be in the typing class and I had to go do French instead because otherwise I'd be a B grade student, which is ironic because that whole, like, I don't know if the whole A stream and B stream student thing was a thing here. I was basically like, you are the smart kids, you are the dumb kids. And it was very blatant. And I wanted to do typing, and apparently typing was what the dumb kids did. And I'm like, typing would have served me so much better than French, of which all I remember is the French for thumb is la pouce. So yeah, I was like, oh, I'll remember that one.
Very useful.
So yeah, I have learned to type, but it was very brief and I'm very bad, and so I never really properly learned to type. Okay. It would have been a much more useful skill than bad French. But yeah, writing tools, I don't know, whatever works. If you want to write by hand,
whoops,
and it helps you because it helps them like slow their brain down and be more careful with the words, then write by hand, and then transcribe it and fix it and edit it as you transcribe. But I'm very big on this thing of like, I don't want to be prescriptive in telling writers how they should write or when they should write or where, because I think that's the worst thing you can do to a writer is tell them this rule that they need to follow to be a real writer. And there's no words combo that I hate more than that. Oh, real writer. What's a real writer? Someone who sits down and types 2,000 words a day on their Corona typewriter and then throws the things off castle style to their agent who immediately somehow sells it. I'm like, what is that? That's nonsense.
That'd be a wonderful life. That's a fantasy life, isn't it? Yeah. We've got time for one last question. Has anyone got any last questions for Kat while she's here?
You can ask me really stupid ones because I'm a fountain of stupid information.
There's a challenge for you people.
No questions.
Ask you the dumb questions. You just ask. That's why I'm here.
Ask me the dumb questions.
All right. If you had to pick one writer's rule to kill, yeah, which would it be?
If I could kill any one of them?
Forever.
Show versus tell.
Show versus tell. Now, how?
Because, like most writers' rules, it is meant to be good and turned out bad. Because there's a lot of good advice in show versus tell. And quite often it's a useful shorthand for when something's not working in a story. But then people take it to be this be-all and end-all. So what you have is, instead of a story where someone says, oh, John got up and then he went to work and then starts like describing, showing the day, they will spend 20 pages showing John getting up. So John stretched, got out of bed, his feet tangled in the sheets, he fell down, then he found his toothbrush, and then he put some toothpaste on it. I'm like, you don't need to show everything. Sometimes telling is really okay. And in certain genres, tell is the way the story is actually told. Fairy tales rely a lot on tell. And if you're working in in a shorter medium and you're retelling, because I love doing retellings, that's one of my favorite things to do. As I say, I like taking them down to the water and bashing their brains in. Then you tell, because that's the style that you work with. So I think show versus tell, it also isn't accurate because people start to think that by showing they must transcribe every little detail, when I think what is actually meant by show is interiority in a character. So getting into the character, showing me their thoughts, showing me their actions, letting me as the reader actually feel what's going on. That's what they're meaning by show, not write down every tiny little action this character is doing. So I think, yeah, show versus tell, I'd like to stab it. This is why they don't get me to teach writing classes. Everything your teacher told you is wrong.
That's a good way to learn. Okay, well that's great, Kat. I think we'll need to call a halt there.
Okay.
So thank you very much.
Thank you very much for having me witter on.
Pleasure. No, you can witter along anytime you want to, as far as I'm concerned.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm just going to say, before I say cheerio, just to say we've got a few events on this week. We've created ourselves a little mini festival, Event Horizon. We've got an event on this coming Thursday if you want to pop along and have a look at this. I'll just cancel this spotlight. There we go. Where are we? Yep, so this is happening this Thursday, which is... You've probably all gathered that Russell's got a lit RPG novel out, and they've got an event talking about that this very Thursday. So if you want to find out more about literary RPGs, which I do, I know nothing about them, so I'm going to look forward to that. That's happening on Thursday. We've got another fun one on next week, which is our art director Mark Toner is going to be talking about creating art for science fiction magazines with one of our great artists, Stephen Pickering, that's them there. And another event we've got coming up afterwards. I'm not going to pronounce this name. I meant to practice it earlier. Naylor King and Chimadum Oegbu, I think, Surveying the Future. These are two great writers that are recommended to us by Tendai. So that's a week on Thursday the 27th. So come along. So, okay. So where am I? Find me again. Yeah. So. Okay, well, thanks everyone for coming.
I expect to see everyone with their Neo Smarts next time.
Yeah. And I hope you enjoyed this. So, okay, thank you. Cheers, and have a safe Sunday.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Cheers.
Thanks, guys. And thank you, Noel, for having me here.
You're welcome. It's been a pleasure. Yep.
Thanks, Kat and Noel.
Raise your mag, mug. Oh no, my background's gone. You can see where I am now.
Oh, you're in the green. You're in the green room.
I am indeed.
My computer is set up in my bedroom, which is why you don't see anything but the screen.
Okay.
Because behind it is a mess and a dog. Do you want to see my dog?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, you've seen my dog, haven't you?
I want to see her again.
Yeah. Let's see your dog. I've not seen it. I've seen your dog on Twitter.
Oh, come here, you fat thing. Come say hello to my dog. She's like, no, I don't want to be here. No, I don't want to be here, you stinky people. She says no. All right, you want to go now? No, she's out of here. I'm not allowed to lock her out the room. That's why she's here. She opened the door. And she was like, no.
My dog used to do the same. She would always scratch at the door if I was doing something. She would come in, make sure we're here. Then she'd go out straight back out again.
No, she goes. She lies on my bed, which she's not allowed to do. Yeah. Now she's sitting with her head on my knee, looking at me with a sad face, like, oh, you know how life is so terrible for dogs. Oh, shame.
Yeah, you need more walks, more food, more stretches.
Yeah, and the dog does too. Yeah.
Yes, I need more walks and definitely more food. I bought myself a beer for afterwards because I was like, oh, I'm going to get into the spirit of the event horizon. So I've got myself a beer ready for afterwards.
Excellent stuff. That's good. I've got one somewhere lurking in a cupboard. Okay, well, thanks again, Kat.
Thank you very much. It was nice to see you all. Well, the people that I did see, I couldn't really see everyone.
Yeah, that's great. So
See some faces.
okay.
Yeah, I had to be here. Your family.
Okay. I'll end the meeting then. So,
okay.
cheerio, everybody.
Bye. Thank you, Noel. Thanks, guys.
Bye. Thanks for
See ya.